Hey guys, Nyaani here. So I actually had some extra content for the Shin Sekai Yori video that didn't end up making the cut. The content in question would have made the video even longer than it already was, and I felt like it wasn't entirely necessary to keep it in the video. That being said, I cut it out with the intention of potentially uploading it to my second channel, which is why you're here now. So if you haven't watched the original video, go click on that first because you'll probably just be lost or you won't even understand why you're watching this video. Also, I do spoil bits and pieces about the first episode, so if you haven't seen the first episode of Shin Sekai Yori, I highly recommend watching it before watching this video. And with that, I will get into it. Thank you. What better a way to expose you to the world of Shin Sekai Yori than to discuss the first episode of the show? Like I said before, the first episode had to be solid if the very picky audience was going to choose to watch the show during that competitive of an anime season. So was it solid? Nah. It was fire. Episode 1 of Shin Sekai Yori tackles every aspect needed to capture an audience, and it does so gracefully. The anime begins with one of the most gruesome opening sequences I think I've ever watched. What looks like modern-day Japan is being sent into chaos as psychic powers emerge in a violent fashion. But just as the audience is able to grasp the horrific spectacle, the show transitions into a sunset scene in an open field where we meet our main characters for the first time. Much of this episode is communicated through visuals rather than dialogue and proper context. These two quick scenes build a sort of suspense as the audience tries to piece together what the exact setting of the anime is. It isn't until the text pops up that you realize the gruesome opening scene was only a flashback and those events happened 1,000 years ago. As the episode progresses, it shows our main character, Watanabe Saki, develop her psychic powers. First inside the Temple of Purification, and second during a flashback of her first awakening at home. The Temple of Purification provides little context to the development of said powers, as the audience still hasn't been given a clue as to the purpose of it. But the awakening scene at home is pretty easy to understand aside from one aspect. The relief shown by Saki's parents upon the awakening of her powers can be interpreted as happiness and is likely done so on a first watch through. However, it will develop into a more shocking reality as you obtain more context clues later in the episode. The episode transitions to Saki's school where she meets her classmates for the first time. Unlike the sunset scene, you get a full glimpse of them and their personalities. This scene also tells you that Saki was the last of her class to develop her psychic powers, even though there were more children still waiting to do so. Before Saki can fully inquire about this, Maria changes the subject. Although short-lived, the little flashback Saki has about visiting Sadhama Farms does give a little insight into the bizarre creatures inhabiting this world. After the conversation between classmates, we get to see a portion of their learning experience. The topic of discussion is ogres. While explained via retellings of first-hand experience, it is still unclear as to whether this creature is of fairy tale status or not. For the audience, it is easy for them to quickly pass off this scene as just a classroom scene, but ogres along with karmic demons will become incredibly notable plot points in the near future. Visualization is covered next with an exercise to recreate a picture in a style similar to the game Telephone. Reiko's inadequacy to do so results in disappointment from her but encouragement from her classmates. Some more class antics ensue before we get a shot of the characters walking home. Saki takes the opportunity to reapproach the topic she was addressing when Maria cut her off before. Why children from Harmony Elementary disappear. The conversation shifts between two different rumors, one of graves in the courtyard of the school and one of trickster cats that come for children. Both rumors quickly get shut down, but it is still unclear as to whether they are true. Nonetheless, it's eerie to think about, and the children clearly don't like doing so. It isn't until Saki begins to ask her parents about the same topics that we get an entirely different reaction. Although her mother also shuts her down, you can tell by her body language and her tone of voice that something isn't quite right. After a visually pleasing transition, we get the last scene in the episode. Upon a first watch, it's a bit difficult to piece together, but the scene switches between shots of Saki's family talking about school over dinner and shots of Saki listening into a conversation between her parents that she wasn't supposed to hear. Saki can't pay attention to the meal conversation as she's burdened with the thoughts of what she overheard just before she developed her powers. Her mother admitting that Saki saw the impure cat, and her mother desperate to make sure Saki develops her powers, screaming, "I don't want to lose any more children," are memories that Saki can't escape. Not only does this scene solidify the fact that the trickster cats and disappearing children are indeed real, but it also does so in an ambiguous way. Plus, the fact that Saki is questioning these topics solidifies just how intelligent the girl is, and it does so in only 24 minutes. Unable to tolerate the front that her parents are putting on, Saki leaves the dinner table early. One last shot of the school is shown as the narrator tells us that several days later, Amano Reiko vanished from the school. This episode is probably one of the best openings to an anime I've ever seen. Firstly, it tackles key plot points that stay relevant to the anime all the way through. Trickster cats, children disappearing, sacred barriers, the education system, and ogres. Secondly, it develops pretty intense world building. We see mutated creatures, a more rural setting than 1,000 years ago, minimal technology, and a strange society full of many secrets. And lastly, it introduces the audience to these concepts in a way that isn't too revealing. For example, even though I explained that the children go missing, it's only possible for you to infer that to be true based on the episode's context. The only tangible evidence we have is the panic expressed by Saki's mother. But okay, assume that children really do disappear. Why is that the case? Oh, you see? There's a question that has yet to be answered. There are a total of 2 shots in the episode foreshadowing Amano Reiko's disappearance. First, after she fails the visualization assignment, and second when she's walking down the stairs. All of which are scenes you likely missed. You absolutely have to be paying attention to every shot in the episode to fully grasp its content. And that's why I love it so much. I dare you to sit down and watch the episode and try to comprehend it all. Even if you listen to my description of the episode, there's so much intentionally left unexplained. There's so much of it that you won't understand until you see later parts of the show, yet it's all placed in front of you to see right from the beginning. Shin Sekai Yori throws you into a world without context, gives you minimum context, and still leaves you intrigued by what you have left to learn. When I finished the show, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Months after I watched it, even though I only got the basic gist of the show, it's still stuck in my mind. And oh boy, when I watched it a second time, gears started turning in my head that I didn't even know were properly lubed. Saki narrates the show from the future, providing foreshadowing that you likely won't catch. Extensive lore is given in the form of a plot dump, yet it somehow manages not to spoil anything important. Some scenes are flat-out visual interpretations of what would otherwise be vocally explained. Facial expressions, body language, and emotions are used in subtle ways that humanize the characters. This show is so different from any traditional anime I've ever watched. It simultaneously manages to give you all the information you need to understand the show, yet does so in a way that leaves so much more to be discovered. That's why I believe it to be the perfect example of a show that's on the borderline between experimental and traditional. On the surface, it's understandable enough, but as you dig deeper, the world develops a sense of fullness that it didn't have before. Shin Sekai Yori leaves specific topics ambiguous while fully explaining others. It causes you to discover context for yourself by reading into each batch of dialogue and every character interaction. Only then are you able to truly conceptualize how messed up the society that these characters reside in is.